So last night we did check out the first episode of Star Trek Discovery.
Oh, how was that?
So if you're a longtime Star Trek fan or watcher of Star Trek and they tell you this is in the main prime timeline and it's before Kirk and Spock, about 10 years before, you're going to have your head scratching a lot. There was a lot of, why are there holograms? Why are there windows on the bridge? Why are the Klingons so dark? Why do they even care about bodies? Because they shouldn't. I mean, there was a lot of continuity that had they were just throwing out the window. So, I mean, it's a great production. It looks great. It looks just like the movies, the new movies. I don't think badly of the new movies. So,
I enjoy the new movies. I mean, even when they're like kind of obvious departures from Star Trek, they're still Star Trek-y enough when they're kind of just enjoyable action movies at that point, even if they're like okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they're not Star Trek. Then at that point, they're Star Wars, right? So they Star Wars Star Trek. That's because Star Trek always had, hey, we have some sort of hidden meaning behind it, and some sort of parable that goes along it. There's none of that in the movies. It's all double fist, palm punch.
But that is something that was missing a bit from older Star Trek movies. Was like you didn't have like sort of like they weren't like as action packed. You would have like a couple warp drive sequences and a couple laser shootouts and like maybe Kirk would get in a fist fight and Spock would come in and throw a comic relief punch. But it wasn't like.
But take a look at the greatest Star Trek ever, right? Movie, right? So that would be Star Trek II: Wrath of Khan, right? So I just saw it last week in theater. Yeah. It was amazing, right? So you sit there with the theater; it's half full of just Star Trek geeks, and it was pretty cool. So he yells Khan, everyone's just cheering and clapping, and there's a lot of energy in the room. So, but Khan and Kirk, they were never in the same room together. They never had a scene together. It was all through a view screen. And there was so much tension, and the themes through it kind of wove throughout the entire thing. It's just so well done. You didn't need the action. You didn't need to build up any of that stuff. And I think that was kind of the movie that kind of brought on the next generation, right? And we don't need the punching and all that stuff.
Dramatic storyline-driven sci-fi like that is tough to pull off, and it's probably even tougher to get made, and it's probably damn near impossible to get made these days. I mean, you think about like non-action packed kind of story-driven sci-fi releases, probably like Interstellar.
I know I saw one on the cruise ship.
Moon.
Right, I saw one on the cruise ship that was with Amy Adams. I forget the name.
The writing movie.
Yes,
Arrival. Thank you. Yeah. So that one was good. So it was like Arrival, Interstellar, Moon, which I really enjoyed, with Sam, what's his name, when he was on the moon and he found out he was.
Yep.
It's kind of like spoiler.
Ex Machina, right?
Yeah, sure. So like, I mean, there's good. Actually, we got really bored with X. Despite ScarJo, we could not keep watching that. That was tough.
Which one was that?
Ex Machina. Oh no, which one was it? Ghost in the Shell.
Ghost in the Shell.
Yeah,
which I haven't seen yet. I probably will sometime in my life.
Yeah, you can skip that one.
So is this just us? It's the Erik and Richie show.
Brent is on an island and Tara is on a call. So we're just goof off the whole time. We don't have to talk about SQL Server at all.
So if you want a question, ask. Send them in now, because it's going to get pretty full here pretty quickly here. So we're getting right about time to start. So get your questions in now.
It is actually technically starting time, but
is it? I don't know
about that. Anyway, all right. So we do have a little bit of, we do have a few questions that we can get to. The first one is from a fella with the atomic symbol for boron in his name, Jorgen. And his question is, I have a table with the size of 100 gigs, my goodness, very nearly a lady, in 100,000 rows. I need to alter one column from decimal 2110 to decimal 2410. Do you have an idea to minimize table walk time? Well, usually I stay away from altering a column like that. Usually what I do is I add a column that's nullable, and then I update that column in chunks so that I don't have to deal with, altering an entire column. I don't know what version of SQL Server you're on, but there are some sort of enhancements when changing things like that about columns. The other thing I'd be well, I guess that doesn't matter because you're going from 21 to 24, so you're not gonna lose any scale on that. But that's what I would do, and then you can use SP rename to flip your columns around, and that's a pretty simple metadata change. So that's probably what I'd stick with for that.
Yep, that's what I do.
Because I mean, as long as that column isn't like the primary key or the clustered index or something, it's a fairly easy switch. You may need to, rearrange your indexes a little bit though. When installing SQL Server 2016, welcome to almost the past, right? 10/2, October 2nd.
Yep.
SQL Server 2017 comes out. So, JH, I don't know why you're installing this old and busted version of SQL Server when the future awaits, man. Future is out there. When installing SQL 2016 on a VM, is it still good practice to put TempDB data and log files on separate letter disk drives? Since it sounds like all the letters are coming from the same underlying storage, is performance better? No. Brent has a great post, Brent, about how separating log files doesn't help you with anything. More importantly, on a SAN, you're right, it's all the same underlying pool. Now, there are some kind of manageability reasons to do it. So like, if you have TempDB data and logs all on one drive letter, and one thing kind of grows out of control, you could affect everything else, right? So if TempDB blows up, and then your data file blows up, well, if your data file wants to grow after that, it's not going to be able to grow. You fill out the drive, you're kind of stuck. It's no fun, right? So there are sort of manageability reasons for separating them. Like you put TempDB on a drive that's, say 100 gigs, you put your data files on another drive that's say 500 gigs, you put your log files on another drive that's say like 250 gigs or something. If any one of those databases or files blows and grows up and blows things out, then you don't have everything impacted. You just kind of separate out the impact. You minimize the impact across the board. So for performance, no, you get nothing out of that. But there are some manageability perspectives that make sense. What do you think, Richie?
I think if you run SP Blitz and you don't have them on, if you have them all on the same drive letter, it's going to flag you for it.
Especially if you're backing up to the same drive.
And if you have TempDB on the same drive.
Yeah. Also, it will complain if you have anything on the C drive.
Yep.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
All right. David asks.
Let the OS have its OSy stuff and have the SQL have
leave the OS alone. If it's stupid page file.
Yeah.
Dreadful. I wish I could say dreadful the same way Gordon Ramsay says dreadful. Every time I watch MasterChef, when he says something's dreadful, I'm like, oh, it's so good. Then when I say dreadful, it's just like, no.
I'm an idiot sandwich.
All right, let's see here. David asks, with always encrypted, is it possible to change the location of the certificate without decrypting and re-encrypting the columns? Would like to change it from current user to local computer. Gosh, I don't know. I haven't used always encrypted all that much, and I have not ever tried to move a certificate in that way. So I would head over to dba.stackexchange.com and ask, because I'm sure someone over there are a bunch of folks from Microsoft who work at Microsoft who answer questions on that site, and I'm sure there are some folks who have even used always encrypted that could answer your question better than I ever could, because security and stuff like that is not really my forte. There's no query plan for the certificate, so I kind of suck at it.
Actually, encryption is like one of my things I'd like to mess with, and I haven't even played with it yet. But actually, this week and a little bit last week, I've actually been messing with 2016 SQL Server. So, which weird for me. I'm actually in SQL Server this week. It's
How do
strange.
you feel about that?
I feel okay. I like SSMS. It's better than PG admin. Well, how's that? I just
PG admin is miserable.
it's bad. It's bad. Now I used to write SQL functions inside of Postgres, but now I'm writing Postgres functions in SQL, and so now I'm all sort of confused.
Yeah. That's a snapback to reality, huh?
Yeah.
One thing that I whenever I've used Postgres in the past that I always missed was the ability to get the graphical show plan. Getting like the explain analyze thing is just like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like awful at it. Reading through, I'm like,
yeah. It was the same thing with Teradata. When I had to do an explain plan through Teradata, I'm like, oh God, no.
Because I mean that's what it used to look like for a SQL Server. Like you do set statistics profile on, I think. You put this profile on, and you get like explain plan with like the weird like stuff spread all over the place. I'm like, I still like it a little bit because you get like really like it shows like right up front like the estimates versus actuals in the rows. So it's really great to spot like bad cardinality estimates and stuff. But other than that, I'm like, I get lost.
That's only because you've gotten so good at reading XML. That's why.
Yeah, it's true. XML is like I can actually read XML like regular human writing now.
Which is so weird. It's like, move on to JSON like the rest of us, buddy. Come on now.
Someday I'll get there. As soon as query plans are in JSON, I'll be there. Live in person.
That would be cool.
All right.
Be awesome.
So MM asks, we are migrating from 2008 R2 to 2014. Why? Why are you living in the past, man?
Maybe it's a jumping point, right? They're going to go to 2016 or 17 soon?
Maybe. I don't know. I never trusted when people say that. I'm always like, you just want to give me a little Band-Aid, and so I stopped griping at you too much. Our developers have NOLOCK everywhere in dozens of jobs. Not my choice. Are there any breaking changes with NOLOCK? Well, there was a cumulative update that broke NOLOCK, where even with a NOLOCK hint, you would not observe the locks that other queries took out. But that's been fixed. So as long as you're on 2014 with whatever the latest service pack in CU is, you'll be fine. I'll leave it up to you to work on getting the NOLOCks out of there, unless no one cares.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to get the NOLOCks out of there.
Unless no one cares.
That's
true.
No
one cares. And if everyone's like, cool, fine, let it do whatever. I don't want to deal with optimistic isolation levels. And NOLOCK, you're like,
I've used NOLOCK, but it was on a system that there were no updates on it. So then, who cares?
Yeah. So why did you put NOLOCK on there? There are no updates.
We were having locking on reading issues.
Really?
Yeah, man. It was a huge. It was like that was a 60 terabyte thing, man. A 60 terabyte database, man. There was crazy stuff going on all over that thing. It was fun. I mean, it's fun to see all the weird stuff that goes on when you're dealing with that size of data.
Seriously,
but,
I mean,
yeah.
My previous limit was somewhere like around 10 terabytes. So I would love to see what happens at 60. I mean, just the I would love to see just like what a all the stuff like this like statistic time and IO would break. That like you read way over big int pages.
yeah, there was a lot of weird things that went on, and it was a lot of it was like a batch loading type schedule, but no updates. So there was some stomping going on, especially if you were in the same partition and all the other fun stuff that you had to deal with.
It's funny, like big servers and big data stuff like that. It's like quantum mechanics. It's almost like they're close, like getting like real close to a black hole and just watching what stuff does. This is weird. I can't figure it out. All right, we should probably answer a question at this point.
No.
Frederick asks, I just found that a previous DBA was not careful with the virtual disk volumes. All disks were left at the default 4K block size our infrastructure team gave us. Should we worry about changing that for servers that have been in production already for a year or two? dude, are you having problems? Are you having I/O issues? Is there something about those drives that's not working correctly? The 64K block size thing was, I guess, a bit more important with direct attached storage. Since you're talking about virtual disks and VMs, well, you're probably sitting on a SAN anyway, and there's so much junk and obfuscation going on between what you consider a disk and what the SAN considers a disk that it doesn't matter anymore. Usually when you see that kind of stuff, that's because that's what the SAN vendor recommended. So what I'd want to do is check with the SAN, whatever SAN vendor documentation, maybe open a ticket with them to make just to find out what best practices are. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the forward-going future, you should set the block size to 64K. But most block sizes I've seen with SAN vendors, they're like, no, just make it the small ones. That way, we make our IOPS numbers look better with that. No, that's fun. Drives. Graham asks, or rather Graham states rather prolifically, I want to build my skills with AGs and failover clusters, but my organization doesn't want to implement them. I've done proof of concept in a test environment, but I want to get real-world skills with AGs. How should I go about this? Offer free DBA services. You know, a good DBA ain't cheap and a cheap DBA ain't good. So don't offer your services for free because no one will want to deal with that. What I would probably do is start looking for a new job where someone's looking for those skills. If that's what you're interested in, your current job isn't going to go for it, well, it's time to move on. You have to follow what you're interested in. This is what happened to me back a couple jobs ago when I was working for a market research place. I was doing SQL and I was doing ETL and I was like writing reports and I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff with it. But at the end of the day, I was only like DBA light. I wasn't getting to do all of the things that I wanted to do. I wasn't getting to implement things that I wanted to implement things. It was really difficult for me to argue structural and procedural changes with people because I was not that. And they didn't need that. They had a bunch of sysadmins who handled that stuff. So that's when I started looking for a different job, and then I got to I started working for an e-discovery shop that needed a DBA, and I started doing all sorts of DBA things that I was very happy doing, learning about, getting to work with failover clusters, getting to set up, mirroring and log shipping and all sorts of other stuff. Unfortunately, no AGs because, well, no, I wouldn't say unfortunately no AGs because I was the only DBA. That would have been a nightmare. But if your current job has no interest in letting you pursue or pursuing the technologies that you're interested in, driving that, then it's just time to move on. Simple as that. I'm sure you have some emotional attachment and whatever, but it's time to go, man.
Well, the other thing that I'd add in too is there's, as much as you may not want to hear this, there are a lot of speakers out there that don't actually do the technology they teach. They do a lot of training on it, and they do a lot of messing around in labs and doing all that stuff, and they don't really get into the real worldy type stuff. And I think that's perfectly okay, because there's actually things that you learn on the fringes when you start poking at the machine and doing different type scenarios on it. You start really seeing how things work, as opposed to if you were in a real job, you probably wouldn't be pushing the edge on some of these technologies and seeing where the boundaries are and what happens in certain conditions. So if you're interested in that, why don't you go put an hour presentation together and submit it to your local SQL Saturday, or give it to your local user group. I think I started out doing a lot of that kind of stuff when I wasn't happy with my gig, and I was the manager and doing architecture and a whole bunch of stuff that I kind of didn't want to do, and I wanted to do more technical stuff, and that's how I kind of got my technology chops back, was going out, doing demos at home, putting the presentation together, and then sharing them with other people, and then having conversations with them afterwards. Hey, what was good? What was bad? How's this really work for you? And doing those kind of fun stuff.
Because, I mean, there's stuff that you can't talk about when you've only worked with something in a lab. like it's really hard for you to talk about like best practices and like how to like set up for DBAs, because working in a lab is totally different from working out in the real world, aside from you're using the same technologies and the same commands, but it's usually totally different. What I would do if I were you, because not many people do this, is I would talk about what happens when things go wrong with AGs. Like what happens when you start unplugging things, turning things off? What when will things gracefully fail over? Like do like demos like that, because that's engaging, interesting stuff. No one wants to see another presentation of you walking through a wizard or running a script to set things up and then be like, hey, it works. That's boring for everyone. It's like when people do the demos like DBCC page and DBCC end. They show you like stuff on a data page and like, great. Cool, I know where my record is. Slot arrays. Woo, I'm having fun. All right. MM follows up. Red tape and money is the reason for SQL Server 2014, and the company has decided that they need to move to Oracle. Wow, you're going to be rich. MM, you are going to be an Oracle DBA. Welcome to Planet Money. Wow. Good for you, man. My hat's off.
Congrats on the higher tax bracket.
I hope that someone from Oracle does office hours, because I can't answer a damn question about Oracle. It's interesting that money would be the issue, since Oracle Enterprise Edition is $47.5 thousand per 0.75 cores of Oracle of on your server. So good luck paying that bill. And that's just to get like the database on there. If you want to do anything, it's like the partitioning add-in, the performance add-in, the analysis add-in. Like you want to do stuff, look at performance, like whatever it's that ASM or whatever. It's money. I'll
think of all those steak and lobster dinners the senior managers had to have. Oracle had to pay them to do that. So they got to get repaid somehow for those steak and lobster dinners.
They got it. Steak and lobster ain't free.
Nope.
Unless you go to Red Lobster, then.
Is it really lobster?
Lobster. All right, let's see here. Next question is from Chris, and I'm going to try to read this one as I go, which is always a mistake. I'm going to fall into the Brent trap and start reading this, and then realize I have Spotlight alerting me to around 4 or 5 deadlocks on a specific database per day. They don't happen at a specific time of day, nor do they happen all at once. Should I be concerned about these deadlocks, or since they are rather random and appear to be handled by the application, should I cautiously keep an eye on them and leave them alone? So when you say they're handled by the application, I assume that you mean that there's some retry logic in there, which means the transaction is just like, oh, got a deadlock, hit the deadlock error message, I'll try again in 5, 10, whatever, how many seconds. In which case I would leave it alone. I don't know. Richie, how do you handle deadlocks in the application layer?
That's pretty much it. I mean, if it's a user-facing one, you have the user do a retry on it. But yeah, typically, if you're really curious, take a peek, see what's possibly going on in those tables during that time, and if you're really concerned about it. But if there's no user errors and the application's kind of handling it, then just kind of keep an eye on it. And if they start increasing, then you know what to do. UDBA, go do that.
I mean, really, unless users are complaining, I can't really see a good reason to worry about it. Worry about stuff that users are complaining about. Let's see. Rowdy brings up a good point. He said that Grant should hit, or it's Graham, not Grant. Sorry, Rowdy, it's Graham. Graham should hit up SQL Saturdays in his area. That is an excellent suggestion from Mr. Rowdy Vincent. Rowdy, I hope all is well. Let's see. Next up, scrolling on down the list. Yes, that is. All right. JH asks, you heard through the grapevine that SQL Server Management Studio is no longer bundled with SQL Server 2016. Can I use an existing SQL Management Studio 14 that I already have on another machine to work on SQL Server 2016 on another machine? My question for you, JH, is now I don't want you to think that I'm calling you lazy, But if you have Management Studio 2014 and SQL Server 2016, why don't you just try connecting?
Well, scratch that, flip it, reverse it, right? So if you install 2016, you could kind of use on anything prior.
Right. Backwards compatibility goes back.
Yeah. So I haven't tried it on going forward yet.
Yeah.
On most cases, I found that will work, but there'll be some odd kind of buggy bugs. Now, this is stuff that I was messing with like in previous versions, not necessarily in 2014 to 2016, but 9 times out of 10 things will work unless it's some like sort of new stuff. And there's a whole bunch of new stuff they just announced like in the last couple of days too. So there's really no reason why not to upgrade your SSMS stuff unless you're like, I don't kind of want the bugs, which they've been better
Who doesn't
about.
want bugs? Make life interesting.
Right? Well, Brent keeps telling me he doesn't want bugs. I'm like, what kind of crazy person are you, man? It's in software. I mean, you're going to have them.
It is. We are only human.
Unfortunately. But yeah, if I would just go ahead and upgrade, because they've been really good in getting updates out for SSMS and getting fixes and patches. The only problem is it does take a while to install. They haven't kind of fixed that problem yet, but they'll get around to it.
It's funny. So SSMS is it's still free, right? It was always free, but it's you download it separately. This is just a separate download link and package for it. It's up to 17.2, at least the last I checked.
Yeah.
But what's really funny about SQL Server Management Studio is an 800 meg download. SQL Server is 1.2 or 3 gigs to download. So Management Studio is like 2/3. It's a SQL Server, like a relational database engine that does a whole bunch of crap versus Management Studio, and they're like just a little bit.
Yeah, and I bet you it's all the Visual Studio Chrome stuff, right? I mean, I bet you it's just all that.
Oh yeah, it's garbage in there. It's all maintenance plans. Wes asks, why does Oracle get such a bad rap? They don't have a bad rap. They have an amazing rap. That is an amazing platform.
Yeah.
What the bad rap comes from how expensive it is. I mean, it's worth it, and because you get a bunch of amazing stuff out of it. And people who work with Oracle are smart as hell. You have to be like a genius to work with Oracle. The commands and the stuff, it's hard, man. I look at that and I'm amazed. If you want to be amazed by question and answer stuff, go to the website asktom.com. It's an Oracle Q&A site, like specifically for Oracle database, and the queries that get put up on there and the stuff people want to do is bananas, and the answers they get are like, why can't I do that? Like, there's stuff that you can do with Oracle that's just so developer friendly. It's so amazing. I'm not going to say never. I'm never saying never, but it's going to be tough. It will be tough for Microsoft to implement and make performant, even though that's not a real word, all the stuff that Oracle has.
Well, and I think it's historical too, right? Because, Oracle historically had some pretty bad interface tools,
Yeah, they still do.
Yeah. So I remember back in the day taking a look at those tools and say, okay, where's Toad? Because that's a hell of a lot better than the out-of-the-box stuff. So, and I think that has kind of gone along with them, even though things have gotten better in that aspect. And then everyone goes straight to cost, right? So
yeah, the cost is outrageous.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with a high-priced enterprise product like that, the folks who cannot afford that kind of will poo-poo it, so that they can say, oh, we made a better choice because it's so expensive and you don't get as much as you pay for, right? So I think that's why there's a lot of the rap there, is because of the cost, and frankly, not a lot of folks can actually afford that.
Yeah. I mean, $47.5 thousand for 0.75 cores of enterprise is nuts, but you get crazy stuff out of it. Like Oracle Rack is amazing. Flashback is amazing. The stuff you can do with Oracle really is great, but it's so expensive and it's so hard. Like Oracle DBAs, I have unlimited respect for, because they have a tough gig. Let's see here. I'm going to answer a quick one before we do anything else. Brian asks, wondering what headset Erik uses? Good question.
Audio-Technica.
It is an Audio-Technica BPHS1. That's Brian, Paul, Harold, Simon 1. So that's what I use. All right, let's move on to something interesting. Erik asks, Erik who spells his name wrong asks, is it good practice to call a C# method from a stored procedure? Is it tricycle furniture? That's my question.
Okay. All right. So what are you trying to do, and how are you calling the stored procedure, right? So are you talking about a CLR function, right, that's written in C#? It could be. I know Adam, refresh my memory. I just went blank.
Mechanic?
Thank you, Adam Mechanic. He's historically done a lot of interesting things with CLR and written some really performant stuff in .NET CLR in SQL Server. Now, if you're somehow going outside of that in some sort of weird fashion to call a C# procedure, that's probably not a good idea. It all depends on what you're trying to do and how performant do you need that C# thing to be. Now, mind you, there are a lot of functions, especially in 2012 on, that are based on .NET stuff. Essentially, you call a T-SQL function and it calls .NET in the background. So sometimes when you write T-SQL, it's calling C# for you, which is actually kind of cool stuff. Format is one of those functions, I believe.
I would hate that.
Hate?
Like, this is a DBA, I would be like, what the hell are you doing to me? Why?
Well, I mean, it's all in the background. You don't know, right? I mean, from a software perspective, it makes sense, right? So you already have all the formatting stuff, so
right,
just plug it in.
Let's see here. Kelly asks a question that I don't have an answer for. Does SSMS 17 still break SSIS 2016? Kelly, unfortunately, I have still never opened SSIS to this day. Still never cracked open bids or whatever people who do that do. Let's see. Oh, Graham says, yes, it does. So thank you, Graham, for letting us know. Graham, a master of availability groups and SSIS, apparently. Appreciate that, Graham. You could do a whole presentation on that. People would be amazed. David asks, what is the best way to call a PowerShell script from T-SQL without using XP command shell? Is it CLR? That's one way. My question would be what the context is, because if you go into SQL Agent, you can have a job step that's a PowerShell script. So if you really need to call it from T-SQL like in a stored procedure, then maybe not the best way. But if you had to call it from, I would say set up the PowerShell script. The agent job step is a PowerShell script executing task, and use that instead, because that is probably the best way that doesn't involve XP command shell.
Yeah, if you need to call it in a stored procedure, that scares me, because PowerShell just is not the fastest thing. Even you just run it locally on your local machine, it is kind of not fast at all. So yeah. I would think, well, why are you doing that? I mean, is there something where you can actually batch stuff up in an app and put it back in the database? Ooh. Maybe that's a better way of doing things.
PowerShell is getting Active Directory membership. The stored proc is called from SSRS. Boy, boy, howdy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that has bad idea genes written all over it.
Yeah.
David, I'm at the risk of offending you. I'm going to send you to dba.stackexchange.com, because it sounds like there's a lot more going on here than just how do I PowerShell.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good stuff going on there, and it's kind of freaking me out there.
SSRS.
Is there behind me? Is there?
Yeah.
Scary stuff, man.
Beep beep, Richie.
They all float down here. All the PowerShells float down here.
All the commandlets. All right, we are at the 45 mark, which means it's time for us to go. I'm going to get back to being monkey and writing stuff and Richie, good luck. I have interesting news, and I'm going to close the meeting as soon as I say this, so hopefully it freezes on your face. I just bought my first C++ book.
Oh, God. It's crazy. Man's crazy. He doesn't know what he's doing.